All right, so I don't really make Star Wars content on this page, so you're just gonna have to take my word for it that I'm a big Star Wars fan because you don't really have much context for it, uh, unless you're someone who actually knows me, in which case you've probably heard me give this speech already. But here, in case you haven't, or in case you agree with me, here are my thoughts for whatever it's worth. I don't like Andor. I do not. So season 1, I'm going to be completely honest, it bored me out of my mind. I had to rewatch the episode several times because I kept falling asleep during them. I kept falling asleep during them. That's how boring they were. I'm not someone who typically falls asleep during a movie or a show, and so for it to do that, especially a Star Wars thing, that says a lot. Usually the only times I'm falling asleep during something is if I'm either extremely tired or I'm sick, and it was that boring. It put me to sleep, so I'd have to rewatch it. And another thing with the show is a lot of the dialogue goes over your head, which a lot of people argue is really good writing because it's like, look at these things, and you have to watch it several times to pick up the context, and you hear these nuances and stuff. And I get what they're saying, but sometimes I argue against that logic because my mindset is if it's too complicated for the audience member to pick up on it, then how is that actually good writing? Because the audience member who's watching it didn't understand half of your story. So it's like, I get movies and shows are an art form. Sometimes I'd argue that because of them also being a means for entertainment, having them as philosophy first, it kind of sometimes defeats the purpose. And if your goal is to get some points across and that goes over the audience's head, then that still isn't good writing because all you've done now is confuse them and they didn't get the point that you were trying to make. So I feel like no matter how I look at it, it's not good writing. If it's too complicated and you're trying to get a message across and the message isn't getting across because you have to watch it several times to understand the message, then you didn't do a good job conveying that message. You didn't. You failed at your job. If your job was to give that message and half your audience didn't pick up on it, then you failed at your job. But I also see the mindset of what they're saying with good writing. Either way, it wasn't for me. Now, here's the thing. I really enjoy Star Wars content. This show also didn't feel like Star Wars. And throughout interviews and things like that, you would see that they were kind of going for that. They didn't want it to seem like normal Star Wars stuff. And I don't agree with that mindset for Star Wars because I'm like, then go to another IP or do your own thing. If you wanted to do a war story, great. And I get it's called Star Wars. It's about wars in space. I get that. But what I mean, like, if you want this grounded, real war story, similar parallels to real war and what it's like, then do that in, again, either another IP or create your own or tell a true story that features all of these. And I also get that the original trilogy had parallels to the real world and what Lucas was doing. I understand that too. I'm not saying that isn't true. But obviously his thing wasn't grounded in reality. Yes, it had parallels to that. Yes, he created the Empire the way he did for a reason. But at the end of the day, it was still this new universe he was creating. Same universe, but in a galaxy far, far away. It wasn't supposed to be our galaxy. It's a galaxy far, far away, and this is a long time ago. It's a space opera. And one of the things about the show was like, oh, there's no lightsabers in it, and the Force isn't being used, and there's no Jedi and no Sith. And I get in the timeline, it's hard to do Jedi and Sith and all that. I get that too. But some of those elements are fundamental elements of Star Wars. So all that to say, I was not a fan of season 1. But I do root for Star Wars. I don't root for Star Wars to fail. I don't look at a project and go, I really hope this project fails. No, I'm hoping for good content because I love Star Wars so much. I'm rooting for it, right? I want it to be good. I'm not looking for Disney to fail so badly that they have to sell the franchise. I would rather that, like, the next show they put out is the greatest thing ever, and the show after that, greatest thing ever, and their movies, same thing. I'm not rooting for it to get so bad that it has to be given to someone else to get good again. No. I just want it to be good. Some people have the mindset of you have to make it really, really bad. That way it can finally be good again. And I don't agree with that mindset. But so I was rooting for season 2, and then it came out, and I have not liked it at all. I don't think that the content is appropriate for Star Wars. I think that some of these themes are too mature for what Star Wars is, and I know that there are arguments for why it's valid. Even looking at the original and prequel trilogies, which George Lucas made. But my argument against that, number one, is in the original trilogy, the certain scene with Leia and Jabba the Hutt, I've always argued against that even being the way it was done. I just don't think that was good. I wasn't allowed to watch Return of the Jedi for years because of that when I was growing up, specifically because of that. So I was always against that, even when I finally did watch the films. But then just from another standpoint, all those things in original and prequel trilogies were always more implied. It was always more implied. And you can do really good storytelling and still use that element and imply it. If the audience can pick up on it, then you've done your job, right? Circling back to the original thing at hand. So it's also kind of funny because the whole show, he's doing this stuff that you almost have to watch several times to understand. And then this was blatantly obvious. And I'm like, well, wait, if you're going with your same logic, then shouldn't you have done something that would be implied? Like, if your audience is smart enough to pick up on the other things, they're going to pick up on this. You don't need to show it. So I don't think that was right. I don't like the whole recasting Bail. I know people in Star Wars have been recast several times. I get that. I think it was unnecessary. And the argument is that he tried and he couldn't get him. He couldn't work it in the schedule. And that's great that he did try. I don't see why he couldn't just delay it another year. Andor was delayed so much, or not delayed, but took so long to come out with season 2. What's one more year, 6 months to 1 more year to let his schedule free up? Like, I agree that Bale needs to be in the story. It would be weird to not have him, but why couldn't you just wait a bit longer, right? It also makes it kind of inconsistent with how they do recast in Star Wars because there's no rhyme or reason for it. And I feel like Disney as a whole needs to come up with their mindset and rule of what the plan is. And this coming from if an actor's alive, right? Like, for example, in Ahsoka season 2, they're recasting because Ryan Stevenson, I believe that's his name, he passed away, right? And he's crucial to that story, so they're having to figure out that. Well, that's a different scenario because the guy passed away. But then at the same time, you look at the sequel trilogy, and when Carrie Fisher did pass away, they still were able to use Leia's footage from archive stuff. But then again, we don't have that for every actor. But they got to come up with some rule for at least when an actor's alive. When someone passes away at an untimely time, when no one's expecting it, I get that. That's harder to work around, and you don't exactly have a standard rule for that. But when someone is alive, I feel like there's got to be some standard of what the policy is for recasting versus not recasting. And if they come out in the public and say what that is too, I feel like Star Wars fans would at least be more on board because they might not agree with the plan, but they'd at least be like, okay, but at least Disney came up with something. I might disagree with this idea, but at least they have an idea and they're not just willy-nilly doing stuff, okay? So that's another thing. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to have to make a part 2. I hate doing this, but it is what it is. I appreciate you listening so far, and hopefully you do watch both parts of this because it would be a shame if you only get the context of some of my speech. So, all right.